Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Last time I showed you how to set up a simple 2D platformer player controller script, and in this episode I want to add wall jumping and wall sliding. So the first thing we want to do is go back to our player and select the player movement script that we created last time. Once you have it open in Visual Studio, I'm just going to go ahead and add a few comments and call this movement and jump variables. And just below this, I'm going to add some wall jump variables. Now what we're doing for the wall jumping is going to be similar to what we do when we're detecting the ground for our regular jumping. We're going to have multiple raycasts, just one on each side of the player, so to the left and the right, and it's going to detect if it's intersecting with a wall, and if it is, if the player is holding the key pointing toward the wall, then they will start sliding down it. And then if they press the space button, then they will jump away from the wall. So first, let's go ahead and define a few variables. I'm going to do a private bool on wall right, private bool on wall left, a vector3 called wall ray position left, another vector3 for wall ray position right, and a couple of raycast hit 2D arrays. First one called wall hits left. And I'll just copy this instead of typing it all out. For wall hits right. So first thing I want to do is actually, last time we put our jumping code inside our movement function. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense, so I'm going to cut that out. And I am actually just going to put it down here in the jump function. I will also add a comment that this is the ground jump. The next piece of cleanup I want to do is with all of these rays. Since we're adding a couple more, I think it makes sense to maybe just add its own function for setting up the rays. So I will call that ray setup. What I'm going to do is I will just copy all of those into there and remove them from the jump function and just call the ray setup function inside at the top of the jump function where all of these were before. I will also go ahead and add a comment saying that these are the ground check / standard jump ray setup. And then down below here, I will define or comment for our wall jump / slide ray setup. And I'm going to go ahead and add the wall ray position left equal to transform dot position plus a new vector3 where the x position is the negative ray position offset, which we defined in our previous video, at 0.5, which is roughly half the height of our character, and 0 for the z since it is a 2D game. I will go ahead and copy that and just call it wall ray position left and remove that negative sign. Next thing I want to define is wall hits left. Set that equal to a physics 2D raycast all at position wall ray position left vector 2 dot left, and the length will be ray length, which we defined last time as well. And I can just take this and paste it for wall hits right and just make the vector 2 dot left negative, and it should point the opposite way, as well as change the position to wall ray position right. Next thing I want to do is I will say on wall left equals ray check of wall hits left. So what ray check is going to do is we're going to be able to pass in these wall hits left or right, which is an array of raycasts that store all the colliders that the ray interacts with. And when we send this, similar to a function we have before, it's going to return true or false if it is interacting with something that's not the player. So let's go ahead and actually define that as a private bool ray check. And I will actually take the code from our ground check and just copy that. And we can adjust this. So I think we can get rid of that outside one. What we want to pass is a raycast hits 2D array. And we can call that ray hits. And I will say for each hit in ray hits, if the collider is not the player collider, then we'll return true. If not, we are returning false. So since we got the left side checked out, we also want to do it for the right. So wall hits right on wall right. And while we're at it, I kind of want to change or update the ground check function to make it a little more general. So what I want to do is I'll right click, go to rename. I'm going to call this ray list check. And I'll rename our ground hits to ray hits. And that way it makes it a little more general. So in the future, if you have any more rays that you want to make an array list or an array of array for raycast hits, you can pass it to the ray list check function. And I don't know, it's a little cleaner. It's not super necessary, but I like it. Another bit of cleanup I want to do is I want to add a function to draw the rays in the scene. So it's a little easier to control when we want to draw the rays, like right here. I have to put these symbols on to comment it out when I don't want to. But if I make it one function, then I only have to comment out one line. So I will make it so right here we put the ground rays, which I believe are these ones. I can take that out. And then I will want to draw our wall rays, which will be coming out of the sides of the player. So to do that, I'm just going to copy one of these lines. I will then copy this piece of code from our wall hits. Actually, I'll do wall hits left first. And just copy paste. And I will make these blue. I can then copy this line, bring it down there, flip the vector2.left by putting a negative sign, and call the position right. So now whenever we want to draw our rays, we can just call this function. I'm going to go ahead and add our draw rays function here. Did I misname it? I certainly did. So now at the end of our ray setup, we are drawing the rays. And if I didn't want to, I could just comment out this one line. So I'm going to save and go ahead and check on how we're doing so far. In Unity, we can go ahead and run our game, and then we can click on gizmos, move our player around, and as you can see, we have our ground rays and our wall rays. Our jumping and our movement seem to be working, so let's go ahead and add our wall slide. So one more thing before we add our wall slide, we need to add a bool to check if we are on the ground. So I'm going to go ahead and go back up top, and I will add a private bool and call it on ground. We can also get rid of this can jump equals true since we have our rays in there to calculate that for us. And one more bool we're going to want to add is a private bool. I'm going to call it can move. I'm going to set that equal to true, and you'll see what we need this for a little bit later. All right, so going back to our jump function, I'm going to add an if statement. It says if we're not on the ground, check if we can move, if input dot get axis raw of the horizontal axis is less than 0 and we are on wall left, then I will set our rigid body's velocity equal to a new vector2 with rb dot velocity dot x for the x value, so that doesn't change, to a negative wall slide speed variable, which we will also need to define. If we go ahead and copy our wall slide speed, we can go back up to the top, and I will define it right here alongside our movement and jump speed. So I will serialize the field, make a private float, paste our wall slide speed. That way we can play with the values in the editor. I will also add an else if. I will copy our previous statement on wall right, and we'll make this greater than 0. Then it is essentially the same thing. I'm breaking it up like this so it's easier to read. You could just do if this or if this one. It really results in the same thing, but I do this for readability. So now we should have our wall slide ability. Let's go check it out. I'm going to go ahead and set our wall slide speed to 1.25. And I'm also going to take a second and change up our scene a little bit so it's a little more wall slide and wall jump friendly. All right, so I'm going to reselect our player, and now we can try out our wall sliding. So if we go ahead and jump, and I'm holding the key against the wall, we're sliding down. That looks good. If I let go, then we'll fall at our usual speed. So I actually realized something. We added the on ground variable, but we didn't actually set it up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set on ground equal to rayless check. I'm going to pass in all raycast hits, and that will return a bool depending on if we are touching the ground or not. Then I am also going to set can jump equal to on ground, and that is just for the normal jump ability. And I'm going to go inside of our jump function and remove this line for the can jump equal to the rayless check. It's doing the same thing, but we're calling it up here in a different function, so it's redundant, and we can remove it. All right, so the next part that we are going to want to do is we are going to add our wall jump ability. And to do this, I'm going to say if input dot get key down of key code dot space and on wall left, and RB, our rigid body's velocity, will equal a new vector2. The x direction, I'm going to say jump speed times 0.5, just to cut it in half. And the y value is just going to be our jump speed. So that way we jump at kind of at an angle away from the wall. And I'm also going to add in a little bit of a cooldown. So I'm going to add an IE enumerator called wall jump cooldown. And I'm going to set can move equal to false for a fraction of a second, just so after we jump away from the wall, we don't immediately move back due to our input. So yield return new, wait for seconds, and I'm just going to put in a quarter of a second, then can move will equal true. And what we want to add as well in our movement function is an if statement. It says if can move, then we will run all of our movement code. And to start this cooldown, we will go ahead and add a start coroutine, wall jump cooldown. So after we jump away from the wall, we'll start our coroutine to start our wall jump cooldown, so we don't move immediately back to the wall. After a quarter second, we will regain control. And that I find that's just about enough time to allow for the player to do any sort of movement they want after a jump. And I'm just going to go ahead and copy that and add it again, but this time for the right side. But I will add a negative sign to the x direction so we jump the other way. With all that checked, I think we are ready to go ahead and test. So I saved my code, going back to Unity. Let's see how we do. Hopefully I didn't miss anything. Go here. And it looks like we're working. One thing with this code, and it could be an improvement for later, if you're only on one wall and you're jumping, you see you can actually climb and scale the wall pretty effectively with only using one side. If you want to prevent that, I'm sure you can find a way around it. I didn't want to put the time into it right now just because I wanted to keep it simple. Maybe that'll be a future video if enough people want it. But for right now, I hope you enjoy your simple wall sliding and wall jumping code that we added to our simple 2D platformer player controller script. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, leave a comment and a like telling me what I should do next, and feel free to subscribe. Thank you very much. Bye.